Member Delgado.
Here.
Member Sliss. Alternate Member Young.
Here.
All right. Okay, thank you. Next up is determination of a quorum. We have a quorum? We have enough people? We do, don't we? Okay. All right, can everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And before we get started, I want to personally thank Mr. Parrish for the incredible amount of information that he provided to us prior to this meeting. It was very welcome. We really appreciate it. I know that you worked really hard on this, and it's astonishing how much stuff you were able to get sent to us. So we really appreciate it, especially the summary of the motions that we've made and how the staff addressed them and the council. It's brilliant. So we really appreciate that, and thank you very much. I wanted to recognize your hard work. Approval of the minutes. So you guys got the minutes in your packets. Does anybody, I guess we need a motion to approve and then open for discussion. So can I hear a motion to approve? And a second?
Second for discussion.
Right. Motion by Member Perez and seconded by Member Mychak. All right, I'm opening the floor for discussion.
Okay, I'd like to start out by bringing us back to those minutes. I had made a recommendation during those minutes that we have video recordings and broadcasting of TEC meetings. It came across as if I was referring to audio, which obviously, I mean, there would be no change if that was the case. So I'd like to make that correction.
All right, any other comments on that? I think, you know, we got an email about it. So basically, that would be a request to correct the minutes from the January 11th TEC meeting, to say that the TEC voted, instead of saying a live audio, the TEC voted for live broadcasting and video recording. And so it's been brought to my attention, Mr. Parrish. So we need an amendment to the minutes. I guess, first of all, we should probably approve the minutes from the April 12th meeting and then go back to the amendment that we need to correct the January 11th minutes. So do I hear any comments or additions, corrections to the minutes from the April 12th meeting, which is what we just seconded and made a motion on? Anybody have any corrections for the April 12th minutes? Member Perez?
You're right, I was referring to the January 11th that I'd like to have amended. Do we go ahead with a vote on
Let's vote on April 12th first, before we go to January 11th. Does anybody have any other corrections or anything for the April 12th minutes? They were a lot more complete than they have been. It looks really good to me. Okay with you guys? All right, do we need a roll call for the approval of the minutes, Lori, or just consensus?
I mean, in the past, we've done either or, so if you would like a roll call, that's fine.
I think, we can just do it with consensus. Everybody that's in favor of approving the April 12th minutes as they were submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the minutes of April 12th are unanimously approved. Thank you very much. Now we can go on to the January 11th. Well, yeah.
That's for
so
the 11th.
That's for the 11th. So,
Yeah.
Tom, do you wanna make a motion?
Yeah.
To have those January 11th?
Are the January 11th minutes, I'm sorry, on the agenda?
No, they are not.
They don't have to be back on your agenda in order
Okay.
for you to consider them.
Does you wanna amend your motion to have the, discussion added to the next month's meeting?
Yes, please. I'd like to make a motion to have discussion of the January 11th meeting of the TEC regarding this issue of broadcasting and audio recording our TEC meetings, which is what was intended.
Video recording.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah,
I made that.
right. Is there a second? All right, so, Member Perez made a motion and Member Delgado seconded that we, add to the agenda for the June meeting, a discussion on the minutes from the January 11th meeting. And, yeah, discussion on how we wanna handle that. Is there any further discussion?
Can you take a public comment?
I guess so.
Oh,
You'll have to fill out a speaker card.
oh, well, can I do it after, so I don't
Yes.
start the meeting?
Yeah.
Kristen Marti, Cocoa resident, and
Turn on your mic, Chris.
oh, thank you, how do I do that?
It should be-
Is it on there? Yes, okay. Kristen Larty, Cocoa resident, thank you for taking my comment. I am the one who caught this on the meeting minutes, that it was in the meeting as audio, live audio recording instead of video recording and broadcast. And I appreciate that you're willing to take it up. I've just never seen where it requires so much protocol to have to go a month out just to amend a minutes, and you can't do it at the meeting. And I'll still be supportive of doing it in June, but I'm not familiar with the protocol of amending the minutes and having had that as a special agenda item a month out. So I just would like to raise that is that, I've just never seen that before. So I appreciate you doing it. I support it whenever it happens. And that's my comment. Thank you. Thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to make a comment? Are there any speaker cards? No. Okay. All those in favor of Member Perez's motion to bring back a discussion of the minutes from the January 11th meeting to the June meeting and have it put on the agenda, everybody say aye that's in favor of that. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously. So, Mr. Parrish, if you can add that to the agenda for the June meeting, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Okay. Got through that. Petitions and requests from the public on non-agenda items. Is there anybody that would like to speak? Come on up, Mr. Johnson.
Stan Johnston, professional engineer, 50 years resident, city of Titusville, worked for the city 7.5 years, and retired from the city, and here with my grandchildren. And remember Sunday, it says in West Virginia, that's where Mother's Day started, was in West Virginia. So this Sunday, I want y'all to remember Mother's Day. That's important. Thank you. I'm kind of like a broken record. This has been going on since October, and it's gone into September, October, November. My reporting of the sewage spill. So I did it again. I called up a state watch number and reported it. Said, I'd like someone to call me about this, and nobody calls. So I've sent some recent emails to the new I want to say new Public Works Director, and that is Kevin Cook, who is the old Public Works Director, but he is now in charge of what Mr. Stoffer, who has left us, is in charge of, and that is sewage spills, so forth like that. So it's a big deal, and I made him know that should he ever deny this sewage spill that happened in September, October, November, I will report him to the board. If he also somehow in writing or publicly says that the sewage spill which is denied by the city after December the 19th of 2020, if he denies that in some way in writing, I will also report him to the board. This is also the same as in effect with Mr. Stoffer. It seems that he dodged it somehow with having other people speak for the sewage spill. So this is still a big deal. And it's a big deal because, like, for example, our vice mayor. Our vice mayor is the pastor of the church, and that pastor of the church received all of these 3 notices during the sewage spill. All these were posted. These were all posted on the city hall door. Some of them were posted on the courthouse, police station, Mayor Diesel's house, Genesis, which is Mr. Jordan's place of business, Genesis 7. Over a dozen churches had some of these sometimes 2. So Arcadia Baptist Church had all 3 of these posted. And the city of Titusville, what did they do? They said, it never happened. So we have a very self-contradictory type situation where it continues. And now we have a situation where someone is claiming that a boy has been paralyzed by the sewage spill. So I will continue, and I would like your support. I know that at this time is that I've recently come to you again about these sewage spills that the city either doesn't report or they also underreport sewage spills. And it looks like they do it quite heavily and quite routinely and quite deceptively and dishonestly. So I'm asking for TEC to follow up and get the truth out of the city, because it's not fun living in a government in which they just say whatever they want to. I mean, what I'm talking about is being not telling the truth. It's not fun. It's not fun, and some people don't sleep at night. Well, at night. I'm one of them. I don't sleep well at night because of this. I can't believe that this is happening with people who I would vote for, or people who I would consider to be above reproach. I'm talking about not just the CRA, not just Titusville council members, but the CRA also. I also went to Dr. Stokel's house and delivered to one of her brother. So right now is we've got still evidence of a sewage spill. This has been a depression where the sewage puddled, and now it's been filled in and sodded over. So we still have evidence of that sewage spill. And I'd like the TEC to follow up and to find out what the heck's going on about these reported sewage spills. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? All right, Ms. Lloyd.
Good evening, Kristen Lortie, Cocoa resident, Titusville supporter, and interested in all of the topics that you cover in Titusville with the TEC. I have a couple of things I'd like to cover that I'm very interested in the agenda item, as you all know, that we'll be talking about for the strategic planning, but I would like to make a couple of more general comments. One of them is that I noticed that the agenda topic that was voted on at the last meeting to discuss the sewage spill that Mr. Johnston had brought up was an item that was supposed to be on this month's agenda, and I was looking forward to that, and it is not on the agenda, so it didn't make the agenda. I'm not sure why, but I did notice, and I am interested in it. If it's been postponed, I don't know, but I appreciated when you guys voted on it last time, and it's not there. Another thing I'd like to mention is that there is so much interest in the TEC meeting that there are 2 recordings going on of the meeting that the city declines to broadcast. So I am recording a copy of the meeting, and we also have a new recording going on, and it's being live streamed by the Talk of Titusville. So the Talk of Titusville is interested enough in the Titusville TEC meetings to come and live stream your meeting that the city declines to live stream in accordance with its own performance objectives and its broadcasting of city meetings. So I would like to say that out loud for the record. And then next, I discussed this a little bit last time, but it just seems so relevant when we get into some of the pushback on the actual agenda item. I want to make sure that I've articulated the role of the TEC and the wide latitude that you all have to speak into the business of Titusville. And I read some of it last time, so I don't need to go over all of it, but I'd like to read a couple of these sentences to help contextualize, the opportunity that the city of Titusville and you all have to comment, to make recommendations to the city. So I highlighted a couple of sentences here. One of them under the goals and objectives says the...
Ms. Lordy,
yes.
Stop the clock for a minute.
Okay.
This is an agenda item, so.
No, but this is
petitions and requests, so what you're talking about should be under the agenda item itself, right?
To me, it feels like by saying out loud the opportunity that Titusville has on any item, it's not specific. It doesn't. It's the comment that I'm making is broader than just tonight's agenda item on strategic planning.
All right. Well,
So,
stay away from the strategic planning. That is an agenda
We'll
item.
not mention. We'll not mention that again.
Okay, start the clock, Lord.
Okay, and thank you for that. I'm open to feedback. What it says under the TEC powers and duties is that it says that you can study general environmental conditions in and surrounding the city of Titusville and make specific recommendations to the city council regarding the environmental effects of existing conditions, future public and private development projects, subjects of particular environmental water resource concern, and issues regarding environmental sustainability in order to improve information available to the city council in their decision making. And then I particularly wanted to read out item number 5. This is in the charter. This is per the city charter, which is to review and make recommendations to the city council on issues of environmental sustainability, such as, and item number 3 is provide recommendations on the adoption, prioritization, and implementation of initiatives, actions, policies, and programs to support and promote all aspects of environmental sustainability. And my comment is intended to be a wide, far-reaching, whether it applies to the items tonight, but everything you do. I just was very impressed that it was pointed out to me that you have a lot of authority, and I appreciate that, and I look forward to seeing you exercise it this evening. Thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak under petitions and requests? Come on up, Mr. Klein.
I'm Bill Klein, 3 Indian River Avenue, Titusville. I would like to have the TEC look back into the sewage bill of December 20, it was December 19, 2020 is what was reported. There's been a lot of misinformation and a lot of facts that haven't been addressed that I think need to be addressed. The sewage bill actually started somewhere around August, maybe even before. There is documentation. There was measurements of an algae bloom that started. There was also the way it was described. It wasn't a catastrophic failure in one day. The pipes were separated slowly over a long period of time as the weight above them pushed the pipes apart. The sewage started leaking well under the pond. It had to leak so much that the sewage would begin to flow up into the pond. This was probably around the time when it killed the fish, which was before Titusville claims the sewage spill started. A lot of this information needs to be looked into and studied better. Another thing that's been brought up several times is the testing of the water quality in the Sandpoint Park ponds. If they had been testing like they were requested back in year of 2013, when they first were making the pond across the street from where I live, before it was dug, I had tried to get to testing program and study the ponds. They did not want to do it. If we had been doing it, I believe you would have seen the sewage entering the pond long before August of 2020, long before December 19, when Titusville claims the sewage started. Also, after the sewage leak was fixed, the ponds were never properly cleaned out. Water was held in the ponds up until April. Then there was this dam going across the canal going to the ponds. When they decided they were going to open up the dam, they should have had a point source permit from the EPA. They did not. They claimed it's a stormwater pond and does not need to be tested. Therefore, it can flow into the IRL at any time it wants to. I believe this was wrong because it was a point source when it was dammed up. And for about 3 or 4 days, they pumped straight into the Indian River Lagoon thousands of gallons of polluted water that had never been cleaned up, and they never measured it. I have been trying to get Titusville to start measuring what they are doing in these ponds. And Sandpoint Park would be a prime example to look at. All the other ponds that flow directly into the Indian River Lagoon need to be tested to find out how much pollution is going into the IRL. The Titusville section of the IRL is almost a closed system. There's very little flow coming from anywhere else except Titusville. The pollution in the IRL in Titusville comes from the land in Titusville. We are our polluters. It's not coming from Melbourne. It's not coming from Lake Okeechobee. It's coming from us. And we don't know what it is. We have no measurement, no calculations, no idea what our section of the Indian River Lagoon is like, because nobody will test it. I think this is time that TEC needs to really push the city into finding out what Titusville City is doing to pollute us and make our water unsafe and unfit to swim in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Does anybody else want to speak on your petitions and requests? All right, are there any comments? I agree. I mean, I'm looking at the Titusville Environmental Commission Plan of Action dated February 12th, 1997, revised on May 13th, 1999. Action step number 7, initiate water sampling at major outfalls and baffle boxes. So our predecessors, they too were interested in water sampling at the major outfalls and baffle boxes. So, it's the can has been being kicked down the road now for over 20, like almost 25 years. So I think it is time. I know it's not required by law, by the state, and that's why it hasn't happened. But, there's a citizen initiative. Citizens have applied for a grant. It looks good, All we need is permission from the city, and citizens will initiate water sampling at some of the major outfalls and baffle boxes. So, perhaps the TEC, could recommend something, to the effect that the TEC is interested in this citizen initiative, and that, maybe we could recommend that the city allow these citizens access to the outfalls. It's not gonna cost the city anything, but that way we would at least know what's going on at a few of our major outfalls. So I'll open it up for discussion.
I agree with everything you said, and like you said, it's something that over 25 years ago, it was being brought forward that we needed to do this. I think at this time, I think we need to revive it and push with a little more science. And we've been talking about this somewhat in circles for a long time, at least as long as I've been here. And I think we need to push, you know, and by that I mean bring it forward again and give it the weight that it needs to make it go forward, because our citizens' safety is at issue. Everywhere else that I've lived, and I've lived by the water in many states, whenever there's anything that happens, you know, big storm, you get the signs and the information being disseminated from government that says, do not go into these waters, you know, it is now polluted because of the runoff that's occurred, blah, 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 blah. We don't have anything like that here. And it shocks me. You know, when we had that spill, I kept saying, wait a minute, somebody should be putting up these signs besides Stan. You know, there should be a government body that does that. I was led to believe that there's a Department of Health, but it's down in Melbourne, that they have to be somehow engaged. Why aren't we engaging them, if that is the case? Okay. Well, I ran into somebody that worked for the Public Health Department recently, and unfortunately, they're retiring, and I don't have their information. Hopefully they'll contact me, but I intended to sort of follow up and see, well, what's wrong with this process that it's not working out for Titusville? You know, and I think at minimum, we might be able to do that, sort of engage the Department of Health ourselves and say, hey, this is what's happening here. How do we get you involved, you know?
Anyone else?
Yes, if you don't mind. The part I don't understand is, this has been going for a long time. Who, apparently, do we need permission from someone other than ourselves to go to Sandpoint and take a water sample? Is that as easy as that, or as difficult as that? Because I don't get the part that we need to go to Melbourne for anything. This is our pond. It lies in the city. We can take samples of any water that's in the city. Every city has that right. So the reluctance to do that over the years, and I'm a Sandpoint person, I go there 6 days a week. I've been doing it for the last 4 years. I will run the bridge and walk the park. And the last thing that I can tell you is, 2 weeks ago, the spray fountain broke. Actually, when the big storm came, they got loose. So the government guys were there fixing it. So I talked to them and said, listen guys, here's the problem. The spray pattern that you have puts spray into the cars that are parking there. Can you move it back? And they said, well, no. I said, well, the water smells. And people are complaining. I didn't identify myself at all. I just said, I come here, yeah. I come here to run every day. And well, they toned down the fountain. The fountain now no longer reaches the car, no matter how windy it gets. Okay, and it took just asking, you know, the guys there to do that. And they did. The fountain is no longer large, that sprays all the car on the east side, okay? And so, again, I've been at some point where it smells bad, when it doesn't smell even worse than that or better than that. And I don't see the problem. I don't understand. I'm the new guy on the board, so I don't get it when I hear the things that, well, we cannot go and test. Yes, we can. All it takes is the willingness of the council to say, we're gonna go test, and we're gonna go find out what's there. And so, from my perspective, I would like to propose that we send council a proposal that says we need to go test the water. And by the way, we want to test once a month. And here's a starting date. And let them turn it down. Let them turn it down.
Amen.
I mean, I'm sorry, but it's very easy to do these things. It's not very hard. And 23 years, I think there've been enough councils and enough TECs to deal with it. So, good or bad, I would like to propose that.
Anyone else? Member Young?
Yeah, I guess 2 or 3 years ago, before the COVID, I brought that discussion up and said the Marine Council, whatever you call them, that they have test kits. And we were told that at the meeting here, this discussion was at the meeting that we had 2 or 3 years ago, I don't remember which date it was. And I brought up the discussion, why don't we, the members, go and get kits? And somebody says, well, the Marine Council kits don't test everything. And when I talked to the city, they said you need to define what you want. And so I never did get anything, and we had the discussion for 2 meetings, and then nothing's been done. So it has been brought before this committee. Why we haven't actually done something ourselves, I cannot tell you, but I stepped out and I didn't accomplish anything either, so I don't know what you have to do except give them all ice cream or something to bribe them.
Member Perez?
Michael, you're very quiet, and you've got all the history, so spill it, please.
I think that we should be monitoring our stormwater outfalls. I mean, it's a simple thing to do. The equipment's inexpensive. It's more of a political will issue. The science is there, and the data to be collected will tell us everything that we need to know about what we're doing right or wrong. And we can follow the source of the pollution upstream to where the real source is, which is what we really want to stop. If we can't stop the pollution at its source, we have no hope, because we'll be dredging out the lagoon forever. It's going to continue to come in. So measurement, to me, is critical. If you can't measure it, then you can't understand what's happening. And if you can't understand what's happening, you have no way of controlling what's going on. So I'm in favor of Member Delgado's proposal.
Well, first of all, Member Young is right. The Marine Resources Council test kits do not test for E. coli and the really bad stuff. Last year, this commission voted unanimously to recommend that the city include $50,000 in their budget to do testing. That was turned down unanimously. So now we have a citizen initiative. It's not going to cost the city anything, but it's my understanding from the leader of this initiative that in order to fill out the grant forms, they have to have permission from the city that owns the property, for the testers to go onto city property and collect water samples to be tested. So my suggestion, is that we make a recommendation to the city council to support the citizen initiative for water testing and grant them permission to enter city property to collect water samples.
Are you saying that we can't do that, or we have to have, the council has the permission, but a citizen can do it, or a citizen has to get permission too, besides us? Everybody has to get permission from the city to do a water sample on city property? So I could have been arrested before.
That's right.
Hard to believe.
Somebody wanna make a motion?
Are your mics on? Microphones?
No, there's no lights.
We can't hear.
I would like to make a motion that we ask council to give that entity permission to enter city property to collect samples and report back.
It's findings.
His findings.
Okay, is there a second?
Yeah, we're talking about Dr. Greenberg, I will second that motion.
We are.
Yes, good.
Are there any speaker cards?
Yes. Stan Johnston.
Good choice. Stan Johnson, let me get it. It's even on my business card. It's on my business card, it's in my wallet, and what it says is Florida Statutes 427, what is it? 471.027. Engineers authorized to enter lands of third parties, including his agents. So I'm letting you know, it's right now, is that I can go on private property in the city of Titusville, get water samples, or my agents can do it. So there's no special, what I'm saying is that right now, you guys are saying is that they need some kind of special permission. If it's under my authority, if it's under Mr. Cook's authority, there's no trespassing there. You can do it. I'll read it to you again. Well, I'll just quote it to you, 471.027, Florida statutes. And that's what it says. I've got it in my wallet right now, and pull it out anytime I need it, and I've used it occasionally. So that part of your motion is not necessary. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Norley?
Yes.
Kristen Marti, Cocoa resident. You have my strong support for measuring the pollution in the stormwater ponds in any way possible. And because of the length of time that you've been talking about this and trying to get something resolved, I think hitting it from as many avenues as possible, whether we're already allowed or we need to have the city support, just keep it going. In the coming agenda item, there is a bundling of this into that proposal. So you can still have this particular item as a standalone item, but it is also wrapped into the coming proposal. Just want to make you aware of that. And I'm very supportive of doing it both ways. So we got to find a way beyond this if we have to get a bunch of citizens and go further to raise awareness on this issue. I think it's very important that it's apparent where the holdup is, and that it's not you guys, and that it's not interested citizens, and just attacking it or approaching it from as many avenues as possible is advisable. So you have my strong support. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more cards?
No, ma'am.
All right, I still support trying to do this, in a good way, that to take it to the city council. The person that has secured the grant, made it clear that they needed permission from the city to be able to enter city property. So I support Member Delgado's motion. And since we don't have any more lights on and there's no more cards, the motion by member Delgado and seconded by member Myjack was to ask the city council to support this citizen initiative, their grant, and allow access to certain city properties in order to collect water for water samples, and to bring his findings back to the city, to report back to the city. All those in favor say aye. Or do we need a roll call on this? It's pretty serious. Yeah, okay, let's have a roll call, Lori, thank you.
Member Perez,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Myjack,
Yes.
Member Young,
Yes.
Member Delgado,
Yes.
Member Tucker. Yes. Chairwoman Thompson.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Can I just follow up with a question? So, like we said, this has been going on forever, okay? And I like to be able to move forward regardless if it's possible. So, if what Stan's saying is correct, okay, but I'm sorry, so Greenberg still needs city permission, even though,
It's in the language of the grant proposal,
oh,
okay?
I see, okay.
He needs a
Forget what I said.
Yeah, he needs permission. Okay, moving on to old business. It doesn't look like we have any old business, so we're moving on to new business. 8A, aligning the TEC recommendations with the city's annual strategic planning process, and discuss a citizen's request to align the TEC recommendations with the city's annual strategic planning process. Now, Mr. Parrish was kind enough to meet with me for quite a while, several weeks ago, and he sent out, this mountain of paperwork. Well, he sent out the TEC motions and where those have gone. But when in our meeting, he explained that these goals that are set by the city are for their planning purposes, internal. They have the meeting once a year, and citizens provide input, but these are goals and recommendations that the city staff uses internally for their planning for the year. And so they're not like, how would I say this? It's not something that, the public can weigh in on, because it's an internal planning process for the city staff. So I think, not sure how to handle this. I mean, we got these suggestions from Mrs. Norte on how the TEC could participate in the process. So I suppose that's probably where we can start, is these two documents. I don't know if anybody printed them. But she made some suggestions specifically for the TEC and how we could participate in this process. So before we open it up for our discussion, are there any speaker cards?
Ms. Thompson, I do have something to add about this.
Yes, please go ahead,
To
Mr.
follow up from our conversation that you and I had about this. So I want to just give an example to the commission about administration of a department. In my role, I have several divisions I work with, and so I work with the individual supervisors to find out where they are with different initiatives that we are working on, and I will use a variety of tools to do that, whether that might be a bulleted list with, okay, where are we with this particular initiative that we're doing, and it's just a basic management tool, basically. So there's a variety of ways I could apply that, or allow the supervisor, as they run their particular division, come up with a metric of how they run their particular division, and they show that to me to say, well, this is what I'm doing to show progress improvement in my particular division or my department. The city manager does that with the various departments of the city. What you have here on page 24 of your packet, starting on page 24, all the way to page 31, is that tool. The city manager came up with this tool, or he inherited this tool from the prior city manager. It's a quarterly report. The department heads get together with the city manager to basically go over a variety of different projects. We manipulate this all the time. It changes constantly. It's just really a monitoring tool for the city manager to understand where the department heads are going with their particular projects, especially because the city manager has to report to city council on the budget. So this is a malleable document. It's not intended to be a long-range planning tool, but I think that's what Ms. Lorty was asking for, or suggesting. Making suggestions on having the TEC be involved in this process, which in some kind of public process, but it's not appropriate because it's a management tool. It's a department head management tool to make sure that the supervisors are doing what the manager is asking for, or just so the manager can follow and make sure, monitor what they're doing. That's basically what this tool is. The city manager can come up with something completely different if he needs to, if he doesn't believe that this tool is even working for him. So if you're in your discussion, if you are looking for some kind of tool to monitor what the city is doing long-term, I would look at the comprehensive plan, or look at maybe a strategic plan that the city has done, and just see where we are in the status of that particular plan. That's just a suggestion. But in the past, even our staff have come to you to kind of help you prioritize your efforts. What do you want to focus on this year? We kind of help you. I remember Eddie at one point came to you a few times. Some members may remember where he asked everybody what they believe are important. He put it on a list, and then we try to rank it. That's one way of kind of prioritizing what your initiatives are, what your priorities are, rather. So I think if you're looking for a long-range tool as far as what the city is doing, there are other tools available that are more long-range that are not what you see here on your packet. What you see in your packet is an administrative tool. So I'm not sure it fits in with what Ms. Lorty is asking you to do. That's all I had to say. I'll try and answer any questions about it.
Thank you, Mr. Parrish. Are there any cards?
Yes, Bill Klein.
Could I go first? Can I go first? Because I'm the one who initiated this. I got a card in too. Because I just like to help to contextualize this a little bit.
Kristen Lortie, Cocoa resident, and appreciative resident for putting this item on the agenda. So starting out with a thank you on that. What you may find is that in listening to the suggestions that we have actually presented on this management tool, and the management tool is based off of the city's strategic goals and objectives, what you may find is that we don't have a wild departure from where the city is already heading. That we have presented 2 proposals that have been emailed to you this afternoon. I have 2 extra copies. But those proposals actually look at what the city is already doing using the city's management tool. And we have made suggestions on that. So we're not trying to head off into an entirely different direction here. What we have done, so I can give a brief overview of what we have done, is that there is one presentation and one proposal that has 6 residents. Mr. Klein is going to be speaking to it, and he'll be talking about some of the scientific recommendations based off of the city's own management tool in regard to 4 lagoon-related measures and the 1 planning objective. So it's highly relevant material, and we're commenting on the city's planning tool that, by the way, it grades itself once a quarter on, so it's a pretty relevant management tool, and that then further goes into the budgeting process. So while the city may be trying to depart us from looking at this, I just invite us back into that discussion however the paperwork goes, because the proposal that Mr. Klein will be speaking to is talking about those. It has buy-in from residents throughout Brevard County on this proposal, and it also includes, by the way, the pollutant increases in the stormwater systems, measuring those pollutants. And once again, talking to the management objectives and that have been included in the current performance measures. So we are really trying to come along with the city's own goals and aspirations for itself. And that sometimes are lackluster. I mean, we have done some review on these, and we think that they could use some enhancements in order to create a tool that can then be more readily presented to the public, and which, by the way, the City Council has weighed in on and supported many of the things that are already in here. So we're all talking in the same world here. That on the March 7th City Council workshop, many of these items, the TEC recorded meetings were discussed, metrics, wanting to give information to the public, education. This is the kind of content that's included in the two proposals before you. The second proposal is what's called the citizen participation opportunities, and it goes right in line with the city's strategic goals and objectives for itself, starting with the city broadcasting all of its meetings, and which it says that it does, but we're wanting to add the TEC meeting and the city workshops, including the March 7th and the community conversation event that happens in February. So we're right along there in this citizen participation opportunities. We've highlighted the items that are specific to the TEC. That one, by the way, is generated by me. So I am I'm the author and the recommender of this one with the citizen participation opportunities, which is why I'm spending a little more time on this. But they're numbered 1 through 12. So the TEC could actually just go through and say, you know, we like all of these, we think they're relevant, it's TEC.1, .2, etc. But we've weighed in on the broadcasting of the city meetings, and then I've weighed in. Then I've weighed in on the effective governance and the training sessions made available to the public, because, you know, and then once again, in alignment with city council objectives to make sure that people are educated, to reduce misinformation and put forward what the city is doing. We have the recommended action saying Titusville should include training sessions made available to the public on environmental concerns. Next, and that just seems so relevant. I'm interested, I know many are. And then the TEC number 6 is Titusville should host training sessions to the public on the strategic planning process that includes an overview of all the 55 performance measures. Now on those, I would like to make a comment that these measurements don't change much over time. The analysis in your own packet shows that year over year, these are staying the same, the targets are staying the same, and it's time for a refresh. And the TEC could make the recommendation to City Council that it is time for a refresh. And as I'm running out of time, I'm going to say that TEC 7 says Titusville should add performance measures related to continuing the effectiveness of current advisory boards. There's topics in here, you know, there's content in here about that. Wanting to make sure that you guys are effective. And suggest tracking the TEC recommendations that are presented to City Council, then adopted by City Council, and then making those available to the public. And lastly, I want to say that this includes the idea of citizen proposals, written comments, and attachments presented to the TEC, included as a part of the monthly minutes, so that the public knows what the TEC is doing. So I wanted to contextualize some of that for this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card.
Bill Blind, 3 Indian River Avenue, Titusville, Florida. I've been looking at some of the strategic goals that Titusville makes in the annual meeting. I was there. And one of the things of the goals, such as Goal 1, Bulletin 1, quality of life improving the IRL. The goals that Titusville sets are more on like projects. They might give a bunch of projects and they list a few things. And looking at them, they're usually pretty easy to meet. You know, they don't take much imagination. It will say we will do 2 projects. And if you do 2 projects, then you win. You've done your goal. I'm thinking that we should make a little more definitive projects. If we want to state actual quantities, these are some that I have suggested. Reduce pollution levels at the Parish Park Beach and the Max Brewer Bridge to be below. Now I'm saying we can measure right at the bridge where people launch the boat. We can do it at Parish Park where people swim and fish. The intercoccal 35 colony forming units should be less than let's see, less than 35 colony performing units, one per 100 milliliters. The total nitrogen should be 0.84 milligrams per liter. The total phosphorus should be 0.086 milligrams per liter. Chlorophyll A should be 0.92 milligrams per cubic meter. These are specific goals. These are goals that I've seen some water treatment facilities working on in wetland facilities. Now, another way of doing it, which I would like to see, you could say the quality of life. Right now it says Titusville Strategic Performance Measurement P1.1, meet projected nutrient load reductions to the Indian River Lagoon debris removal, target 1,000 pounds of nitrogen, 500 pounds of phosphorus. Now, we don't know if that's much or not. We don't know if that would really help. It's a number, but it doesn't have any backing. What I would say is test and measure the amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, chlorophyll A, fecal bacteria, and other pollutants in the outflow of Sandpoint Park Retention Pond. Measure or calculate the estimated amount of water flow discharged in the IRL from this pond. Calculate the total amount of each pollutant that flows into the IRL during the year. Doing that, you will know what's coming out. You will have a quantity. Once you know what you're trying to reduce, you can start working on it. So the second goal is, if you're trying to fix it, plant a littoral zone and monitor the pollution to determine the amount of pollutant levels decreased by the plants. You know, right now, there's grass, which gets mowed, goes into the river, gets sprayed with herbicides, goes into the pond, and you don't know what's there. What we could actually do is measure before the water, the stormwater going into the pond, and measure the water coming out of the just before it goes into the Indian River Lagoon is a pipe. You could measure it there so you could see what's coming into the pond and what's going out. Then if you plant a littoral zone and during the year monitor, you can see if there's been a better reduction. Right now, we don't know if the pond works. I've seen tests done by the University of Florida stating that some of these ponds, if it's during a heavy rain and you have very short time retention, it's 4% reduction, and it should be 80%. Now, we don't even know what it is. We don't have a measurement. So what I'm thinking is, we should set goals that determine what it is we're doing, then measure what we're doing, and then see if we're accomplishing something. Right now, I was at a meeting and they said, we met 11 goals. Oh, what did it do? They didn't say what it affected or how it improved anything. That's what thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Are there any more cards?
I don't believe so.
Darren Johnson.
It's right there, standing right up, on the floor. Is that your card?
Oh, here it is. Is this 8A? No. You should have it inside me. May I use that card then? I'm sorry, I'm going to submit that card I had filled out. I'm looking at the package, pages 24 to 31, and it says WR 2.17. It says on WR 2.7, respond to all customer water quality concerns within 24 hours, excluding, it doesn't say what the excluding is. Okay, I'm licensed by the state to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And I make numerous calls to the council, to city manager, to water resources, and they don't return my calls. Serious issues. Like, for example,
Spraying daily, again and again and again, day by day by day by day for months. Spraying Sandpoint Park. Spraying in Spaceview Park. And now what they do, they did it again. Spraying in Senior Center Park. So they're not responding to this, and it's one of their goals. And they had signs. They have signs posted that said, please call this number. I call the number. No response. I think Mrs. Laura Lee Thompson had the same problem. She called her about things, no response. So we have a huge problem here in the city of Titusville. In other words, they have this goal, WR 2.17, respond to all customers, and they say they're doing it, but they're not doing it at all. I mean, we have, for example, citywide boiled water alerts. Citywide boiled water alerts. I'm gonna have to do citywide boiled water alerts. I know of no other city in the state of Florida that has citywide boiled water alerts, except for the city of Titusville. And of course, the first presentation by Mr. Stauffer said, oh, well, you know, it's not a big thing. The second time he spoke, he mentioned something that I mentioned, log 24 virus. It's log, or is it log 14 virus? Anyhow, it's a log virus, something. It has to do with the water that's coming out of the well field, whether it's appropriate or not. So the thing is that Mr. Stauffer said something to the effect is that he'd have to look into it and report back with us. That's been over a year ago. Nobody reported back to us. This is a health concern, a customer water quality concern, within 24 hours excluding. So I've recalled repeatedly about the boiled water alert. No return phone calls. So I called when Mr. Stauffer left. I called the next person in command, Mr. Janser, to talk to him about some concerns. So what does he do? Click. He hung up. I said, my name is Stan Johnson, and so forth like that. I'm calling to you about. Click. I don't think that's responsive at all. Mr. Stauffer, he didn't have to do click. He just never would return calls. City manager, same way, doesn't return my calls. Understand is that I've got a license to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. How can I do my job? How can I sleep at night when the city of Titusville continues to disobey their own laws? It's not easy. My wife suffers. That's not funny, but it is. It's the truth. So I would like something is that when you're considering what you're doing is look at WR 2.17, because I ask questions, I don't get responses. Same as happening right now, for example, about this recent sewage bill back in September, October, November. I mean, it was continuing for some time. City worked on it. They had a crew out there with they were removing the water from groundwater so they could dig up the manhole. And so there's many city employees that knew, or they still know, that we had a sewage spill there. Not just from photos, because they were there and they saw it. So I'm asking you to consider especially what Mrs. Kristen is talking about, and that TEC needs to be involved in these things, not just a financial decision made, using as a financial decision by council, some kind of thing to build themselves up, saying financial, because these finances affect us all, not just council getting permission or something like that from city council. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Are there any more cards, Lori?
I don't think so.
All right. We'll open up the floor for discussion.
So, this thing is a tool, I believe. You call it a tool? A management tool?
The city manager uses it to work with so for example, on page 32 of the packet, that's his tool something he's inherited from previous city managers. It was developed to communicate with the city council, between the city council and the city manager, as far as their priorities each year, so that he knows what to put into the budget, what to propose in the budget as far as allocations, based on their priorities. And then to help make sure that we're following that budget, that's what you see on page 24 through 31. It's his tool to, he asked the city department heads to respond with information in here and admit where they believe they might be deficient or not make changes to this, as a means of reporting to the city manager, here's what we're doing. So yes, is it a management tool?
So being a management tool, it's owned by the city.
Yeah, I mean,
It's owned by the city manager.
yeah, the city manager uses this as his tool to monitor the
So
department
given
heads.
that it is one,
I'm sorry?
given that it is a tool
Okay.
owned by the city, I think that it would be proper for this body to take a look at the items that are there and perhaps send some recommendations as to how they could be more meaningful. Because I looked through some of those, and removing debris and weighing it is not a pollution reduction item. I just can't wrap my head around that, to be honest with you. And that's fine, I'm not criticizing that, I'm just saying, when I looked at it, there were some items that perhaps the TEC can help in achieving a more meaningful goal for a more meaningful outcome to the city. So again, this is why I'm searching that the willingness to maybe on item XXX, whatever it may be, why don't we look at it this way versus the way you're looking at it, so that we can have, I mean, there are measurements in there that talk about pollution, but we don't test for it. So I don't see how they're getting their answers. It baffled me when I look at those things, and we admit we're not testing. So therefore.
So you've made a motion, I don't mean to interrupt, sir, but this is,
I'm dialoguing
yeah.
with trying to ascertain the fact that it is a management tool. It is owned by the city. We are a portion of the city. And should we and can we maybe input to bring relevance to the items that perhaps affect us as a TEC into those guidelines to improve what the city aims for in the future. Do you follow what I'm trying to say?
I do follow what you're saying. So the commission does have the ability to make recommendations to city council as far as any strategic planning. But what you have here before you is an internal document that a bureaucrat uses to monitor other bureaucrats. So it's mainly basically like an application form or a bullet form that is between two different supervisors and department heads. It's an internal document for managing personnel, basically. So I think what you're suggesting though is some kind of tool or planning tool that is really something that you would want to recommend to city council to maybe consider. You've already asked and approved a motion to ask council to consider allowing someone to go on property to do testing. And if you need,
that's a separate subject. This is a bigger subject. This deals with a bigger philosophy of the city.
right,
Than
and
doing testing from an entity. Okay, I'm looking at the bigger picture of the city. This document deals with the global.
this document won't help you do that kind of strategic planning with the city council. That's what I'm trying to get at here.
But again, maybe you did not understand my searching. My searching was so that we can improve this tool within the management of the city, so that council can have a better tool being put together. Instead of just, I'm going to reduce pollution by picking up debris from the IRL. That doesn't, there's a little bit of, what am I missing from those metrics? And metrics can be done 10,000 ways. I agree with anybody like that. I've been through it for all my life. want to work out there, we did that, so.
I'd just be careful about, when I say you can't make those kind of recommendations, it's just that the responsibility of the city manager to respond to his employer, which is the city council. And we, you know, myself work for the city manager. So it's really a relationship. What you're asking for is the city council to be involved inside that relationship between the city manager and how he administers the city staff. But that doesn't sound like what you really want. What you're looking for is some kind of mechanism that you can, a report card basically, that the city council can utilize and see that the city is doing something or meeting certain goals and benchmarks, like a comprehensive plan policy or strategic plan policy, that the city council would ask staff or consultant that they would work on with the community's help. This is not it. That's what I'm trying to get at.
But it's presented as such.
It was never presented to the public. What was presented to the public was what you see on page 32.
Yes.
That was it.
So all the stuff that's on all the pages before 32 were not presented to the public in that workshop? I didn't attend it, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't recall that those pages were included as part of a presentation. That workshop that was in February was a budget strategic planning workshop where the city manager there with the city council, for the benefit of the city council, to hear from the public, what do they believe are their important things to be concerned about or prioritize for the next fiscal year. And so the input they would get from that meeting through the facilitator was provided to city council at a subsequent meeting, and they considered that information and then worked with the city manager to amend or revise this document you see on page 32 of your packet. And then the city manager took that document when it was finally approved and used that as far as his budgeting purposes and helping him understand what city council's priorities are as far as what he's going to propose in his budget about how resources will be allocated. So that is still in process. The city manager is going to propose a budget to the city council. I believe I put it on your cover page, on page 10 of your packet. In August, there will be a proposed budget would be submitted to the city council in July with a workshop in August, and then there'll be public hearings in September. That's the typical cycle.
So going back to the chart that's on page 32, I would say, let me find it and get yeah. But the way it was explained to me is that these goals don't change. It's something that's used every year to try to gauge whether city staff is fulfilling these goals through all the things that were outlined in the 10 or 12 pages before it. So if I'm understanding you, Brad, we could say, take goal 1, quality of life, continue initiatives and actions to improve the Indian River Lagoon. Our job as the TEC would be to maybe suggest some things that council and the city manager and staff could consider that would help accomplish continuing initiatives and actions to improve the Indian River Lagoon, which is what we just voted on, your motion to support the citizen initiative to get a grant to do stormwater monitoring. That's exactly what we just did. And so I think what you're saying is that we, the TEC, well, for example, Mr. Klein suggested some actual pollution levels, you know, at Parish Park Beach and Max Brewer Bridge, that we should strive to keep our pollution levels below these certain certain levels that he suggested. I think that's where we are. I mean, I personally, I'm not interested in economic development. I don't think that is our role. I personally don't want to spend time going through 55 things and making comments or tearing them apart or whatever we're going to do. I think that we would be wasting our time on trying to do that. But I think, you know, the direction that we're going, I believe is where we should be going. So, you know, if somebody wanted to make a motion that we look at Mr. Klein's levels, and that we suggest that the city be held to these standards, that I think is where this body would be useful. I don't see us addressing a whole bunch of other stuff. I think we need to concentrate on the environment, and you know, that's what our role is. I mean, we got wetlands changes coming up in the comp plan. There's all kinds of stuff coming down the road at us, and we could spend the rest of the year just trying to address this document that is a management tool that we really shouldn't be involved in my opinion. Who had the first slide? Mr. Young?
Okay, I've been on this for a while, this commission, and I always thought that you guys were organized, and now that I've seen your document here, you are organized, okay? And it makes me feel like we're disorganized because you have a planning tool that you're working with. It may not detailed or providing the information that we're seeking to make decisions upon. Okay, but you have a management tool that helps you be organized in your direction. Okay, whether you're meeting our needs or other people's needs, that's someone else must decide. So what I'm also kind of surprised in that a light bulb all of a sudden just came on, okay, is that you have this tool that we don't have. And I'm wondering, should we have a tool that we should work with that deals with the environmental issues that we have to? So if we took this thing here and pulled out 1C and 2F and 5G and pulled them out and said, this is our plan, and we get your tool, and we then have a structure for how we proceed, because most of the time, in the time I've been on this committee, is we're reactionary. Somebody comes up here and says something, and then we react. I don't necessarily see us being in a plan of knowing where we're going to go, except trying to resolve issues that are being thrown at us. And whether there's a way we can do that or not, be more organized, as you appear to be organized, there may not be enough detail that tells us that we're accomplishing what we're looking for, but I think we should be a little more organized. And so I like to think that in a future meeting, we're going to take this list that you have here, pull out the items that are our responsibility, and us make our own plan on how we're going to proceed, that we can fit in the plan and the public's comments of pushing us to go in some direction. And I like to think that we can better organize ourselves and look more professional than we are and have been. So I'd like to thank you for this, you know, putting this in our report here, that we get to see this. That's pretty cool. Okay, so I thank you for that. And I'd like to address that to our people here. Like I said 3 years ago, even whether someone earlier pointed out that this was done 20 years ago, we did have a discussion, and we were going to go and do some measurements and stuff, but it fell apart, okay? So I think maybe something like this, rather than jumping to each person's response, having a plan that we then stick them in the proper cubbyhole that they belong into to move forward. So that's my comment is let's look a little more professional than we are.
You know, I keep coming back to goal 1, quality of life, and the strategic goals and objectives chart that hasn't changed over the years. We continue to say year after year, continue initiatives and actions to improve the Indian River Lagoon. What initiatives and what actions? And what's been the improvement? Because if we can't spell out what those initiatives are and what actions are being taken, there is no improvement, not on our behalf. Of course this is a management tool. That's precisely what it's supposed to be. We used these kind of tools 25, 35 years ago when they first started talking about total quality management, the predecessor of what is now Six Sigma. The advantage of the Six Sigma approach is that it covers 99.9% of all problems. That's the whole idea. It's a statistical definition. So if we're not willing to embrace the whole problem as a city together, then we have a problem. And I think sweeping this under the rug, as the city staff seems to be suggesting, is absolutely the wrong thing to be doing.
That's correct.
Who had the first slide? Member Perez?
You know, I like the discussion. It really builds upon something that is starting to coherently make a lot of sense. Okay, so I do agree that that tool is something that we can fit in and make it even stronger for you guys. Okay, you're missing a lot of pieces, and I think we can be an asset, just like, you know, it's working as a team. It's not an issue of control, which I believe, you know, the culture that exists is one that, you know, this is my turf, this is what I do here. I don't want anybody else telling me what to do. I think that's a bad approach if we want this city to continue to evolve. I think we can work as a team using that tool and building on that tool by letting us provide you, actually we're gonna do it anyway, okay? Provide you with the feedback that I think you need, okay? Whether or not you want.
Okay, so where I was coming from was exactly all that, but it's the integration of this commission to that tool, so that the city manager can actually have a united front when he goes for budgeting. And he can also go look and say, oh, by the way, there's $100 million that the state of Florida just put aside for the Indian River Lagoon. How can we, in the city of Titusville, get our fair share? Okay, we can be a tool for that. We can be a force to help the city and him get those things in line. And that should be in his report card, which is what this is, according to what I understand. Okay, that says, we're working on these initiatives and we're working with. And here's a litany of names that we're working with and institutions, so that we can go win some contracts and we can go win some money from the state. There's $100 million, for God's sake. If you leave it alone, most of it's gonna go to Melbourne. Okay? And so that's where I was coming from. It's that integration. It's not to tell them what to do, but integrate with what we're doing into what that vision is. It's our vision, not the city manager. The city manager is a spokesperson for the city and the council, and so are we, and we all need to work together. That was it.
So, you know, going back to the thing that I handed out at the last meeting, which is the powers and duties of the TEC, the entire first page is, you know, it specifically says what we as a committee can do. And so, I can send it out again, but you know, just if you look at the goals and objectives, it says the Titusville Environmental Water Resources Commission shall study general environmental conditions in and surrounding the city of Titusville and make specific recommendations to the city council regarding the environmental effects of existing conditions, future public and private development projects, subjects of particular environmental water resources concern, and issues regarding environmental sustainability in order to improve information available to the city council in their decision-making role. So, you know, that sets the stage for us to do exactly what we just did. Recommending that the city support the citizen initiative that's not going to cost the city a penny for this grant to study discharges from some of our stormwater conveyances. You know, I guess we could, I don't think it would be out of line for us to ask for a list from the city manager of what exactly the initiatives and actions to improve the Indian River Lagoon are. And then if we see that list, then we can maybe, you know, make some suggestions on how to improve that. I see that as a role for us, possibly.
What I was thinking, Dora Lee, was the thing is that it's one thing to have a statement, but if the goal is not measurable, then it's just a vision. It needs to have some measurements tied to it. Mm-hmm. We're going to improve the Indian River Lagoon by X. We're going to do X, Y, Z to accomplish X. And we're going to measure that with these measures. You just become clear instead of tossing out an idea, a concept that sounds nice that you don't have to do anything for. A metric that's meaningful will show you the value of the goals that you set, and these things should change year after year after year as those initiatives and actions have been accomplished and those goals met. New goals need to be defined, and new actions and measurements need to be defined. This needs to tie back somehow to what we see under quality of life on page 21 through whatever, and it doesn't. I don't see how this one line item under goal 1, quality of life, maps to anything directly in the rest of the preceding pages here. And yet this page with these goal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 have been produced for at least 4 years with the same date. How can we show any progress? Because to do the same thing is not progress. We need to move on, and we need to do that by putting hard lines on these things, metrics that we want to actually see accomplished. And they should be in our goals and our initiatives and demonstrated through the actions that we accomplish.
I agree, otherwise all we have is words. If you don't have accountability for meeting something that's measured,
yes,
then we're nowhere, right?
So where do we go?
Well, we got an email from Ms. Lorte this afternoon, and I printed what we have, but the rest of you don't have it, so it's kind of hard to discuss what you can't see in front of you. We could table this discussion until we have time, you know, to end up with these things in our packet, because it's until the next meeting, because I don't see us, we're not going anywhere right now, and it's 7 o'clock.
Ma'am, can I make a may I address you for a second, for a moment?
Do you guys want her to come up and address us?
Yeah, by all means.
Okay,
Can't do any harm.
thank you.
Have to fill out another speaker.
I will, I'm right there. Okay, thank you. Kristen Ortiz, Cocoa resident. Excellent discussion, very supportive of where this is headed. I really want to call your attention to the fact that in the proposal that was sent this afternoon, that I was speaking to earlier, these proposals pull out relevant items. So we have the 4 lagoon items that are in the city's, we'll call it the management tool, 4 lagoon-related items. Mr. Klein has helped us with developing specific suggestions for those. Plus, there's 1 development item which says, hey, you know, the city recommends that they want to encourage sustainable development and redevelopment. And what we are positing to you is that, no, let's require that. So this document, and I apologize if I didn't get it to you all in time. I was gathering input on it and trying to get it finalized. This document provides a targeted tool for you to use to consider and to come back and say, these are the items that we would like to weigh in on the city's strategic management tool, that we would like to give this feedback to city council, because you can't go directly to the city manager, to city council, and to say that we support these. So if you were to look through this, it has the 4 lagoon items, it has 1 on the development, and then Mr. Klein added 1 recommendation that he suggested to be added, just simply 1. It's got measurable. He's been taking a lot of time to make sure that the goals are measurable. And then we have additional on the participation component, educating the public, recorded TEC meetings, allowing us to weigh in. So this document, these 2 documents, it's in part 1 and 2 proposal, really can serve the basis for providing that. And what the city does with it, if they say we don't want you inputting on our tool, they have relevant information to talk to their managers about and to be coordinating and coalescing the council workshop, the community conversation, the TEC, and the management goals for the city. So I really think we've given you something useful, and what you might consider is taking the time to review this for the next meeting. Because it's something to digest now to make sure that you're in buy-in for it. But we've really done some of the work for you of making this a usable tool and not having to look at all 55 performance measures. Mr. Johnston brought another one about the water and getting callbacks, but we have really isolated lagoon-related, the amendments to the city, and then the citizen participation in a relevant way. So I just wanted to make sure that I call your attention to this, and I apologize once again for getting it to you late, but this could provide a basis for really relevant, and I have 2 extra copies of hard copies with me, so if anybody wants those, they're welcome to them. Does that make sense? As you're taking the time to do, I just want to make sure that, and I appreciate being able to address you again. Any questions? Did I say it clearly?
Not to go make a big deal out of this. I looked at the numbers, Mr. Klein, that you proposed. Some of those are because I look at numbers, that's what I do. Your numbers, the first number, by the way, that's how Cocoa Beach closed the pier 2 weeks ago when they found human waste around the pier. And that number goes back 20 years at least. It's not a new EPA requirement, as people think it may be. It is not. Measuring the 35 colonies is not a big deal. It's done all the time, by the way. And every city does it routinely. But the lower 2 items that were talked about, I could not find anywhere in the Indian River Lagoon that anyone has agreed to those 2. Is that a fair comment?
That's a fair comment. What I did, I used to work in a sewage treatment facility in West Palm Beach. We had a huge wetland. First you would process the sewage through the plant. You'd clean it up the best you could mechanically, filtering, chemically, and all that sort of stuff. And then when we were getting rid of the water, we would send it through this wetland treatment facility. Plants were selected. It's just like the one they have out in Orange County. the numbers I gave you comes from Orange County. I went through looking to see what was the phosphorus, what was the nitrogen. I know these are tight requirements. And this is what can be done. Another thing that I talked with the mayor at the last city council meeting, he said, stormwater ponds are supposed to be polluted. They hold polluted water. They don't release it. I said, well, they do release it. When it's running, I said, I've got reports that say maybe they only take out 4%. And these numbers are way high. One of the things I'm thinking of doing, if we could start a study to see how can you change the design of the pond. I've read things saying that floating islands of plants like they have installed there are very good. Littoral zones around the pond to keep the pollution from getting to the pond from the runoff is very good. So I've tried to find some people who would say, let's take two separate ponds. One we're going to leave the way it is. The other one we're going to make changes. We're going to monitor the water going into the pond and coming out. I'd like to see that study done. I haven't got anyone willing to do it yet. Then there's another idea I have, which is bigger. There are some ideas that we could develop a large wetland facility here in Titusville. Maybe one area could be near Highway 50 behind the Publix shopping area. There's a big area that they could develop. There's also some discussion that some people might like to see EEL buy this land, turn it into a wetland facility, make it something like the wetland facility out in Orange that they have in Christmas for Orange County, where they treat water that's coming from the sewage plant in Orange County, goes to Christmas, and it goes to a very well-designed wetland facility, and it cleans up the water like you see in the numbers I have. I know you're not going to make it right away. It's a goal to shoot for. What I'm thinking is, I would like to have an organization. I've contacted many organizations here in Brevard County to say, what would be clean water pollution levels for all these different things like phosphorus, nitrogen, E. coli, the different type of pollutants. I would like to know the max and the min, because you need some nitrogen and phosphorus in the water for things to grow. You don't want to make it sterile, but so you need an upper and lower limit, just like fresh water. If you have too much fresh water in the Indian River Lagoon, it's going to kill the oysters and the clams. So you need an upper and lower. Like some people have said, let's have an outlet going to the Atlantic Ocean. Well, I don't like that idea, but if you are measuring the water in the Indian River Lagoon and the freshwater content is too low that our marine life can't live, maybe it would be good to pump a certain amount of water from the Atlantic to get some salt. Maybe there'd be a better way of doing LID and forcing people, not say, hey, if you do some LID project, we're going to give you some money. What you say is, there will be no stormwater running off your property for the annual rainfall, which is 54 inches. If you know there's 54 inches of rain coming to Titusville, then if you're designing a development, you need to collect those 54 inches, and no runoff goes to the Indian River Lagoon. No runoff goes off your property boundaries. That's what I would like. Because if we could start absorbing the runoff, maybe what you could do is take some of this runoff and say, let's pump it over to that wetland facility that we just designed. Instead of, let's dump it in the IRL because that's simple and easy and anybody can do that. I think we need to start looking at how do we get rid of too much fresh water? How do we get rid of the different pollutants? And find ways that we can do it. Sometimes you might have to build a facility like a wetland facility. Maybe you can do it chemically in some other ways, but we need to think what can be done and what do we want. Right now, I'm from an organization here in Brevard County that can tell me what they'd like to see out in the Indian River Lagoon. I would work on it. I would think that we could say, what do oysters need to grow? What do clams need to grow? Now, when that water is in that type of quality, now we've got what we want. We want to have oysters and clams able to live, because it was around 2018, I had Brevard Zoo come up to Harbor Point where I live, and they went hand over hand in the water looking to see if we could install an oyster reef. They found seagrasses growing back then. Not a lot, but there was some. We found some oysters that were able to live. I got Harbor Point willing to install the oysters, and we were going to have Brevard Zoo write and get permission and get money from SRIL to install the oysters. We were told, no, they don't grow there. You can't do anything. That's what I've been seeing a long time, is there's always easy to say, we're not going to fix anything, and if we don't test, we don't even know what our problems are. So that's what I'm thinking we ought to do. Start actually physically looking at what we can do and make modifications and test them as we do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clay. All right, so let's get back on point. We were talking about, I think that this needs to be tabled until it can be provided.
I motion that we table this until the next meeting. And that'll give us time to also read Kristen's latest email.
All right, so Mr. Parrish, can we have these two documents included in next month's agenda?
The documents that were sent by Ms. Lorty?
Yes.
So let me make sure I understand which documents, because there were 4 emails from her.
I know, there was a whole bunch.
Apologies.
These were 2 documents that were sent in the middle of the afternoon this afternoon. It's much more concise than the 20-page.
Well, do you need the rest of the agenda item? Maybe just make it a new agenda item just on what she's recommending and just consider those recommendations only? Because it sounds like to me, what I heard from Mr. Young from others is that you just want to take out what's relevant to you. Maybe make it a strategic list of priorities for yourselves, for the TEC as a communication tool between you and the council. And not so much a recommendation or suggestion to city council or city manager to make changes to how he supervises his staff. But rather, it's because really you're working, you're a recommending body of the council. So this is really a communication tool between you and the council. So it sounds like to me that's what was being suggested. Tell me if I'm wrong. And that looks like what Ms. Lorty has here. She has taken just what she believes recommending to you to be relevant, and then you can take those 2 documents, those recommendations on just what's relevant to the environment in the River Lagoon, and then make adjustments to that at your conversation at your
And
next
citizen
meeting.
participation at 1:58 p.m.
I'm sorry, that's my understanding. You can tell me if I'm incorrect, but that was what I was hearing. And that's what I observed reading what she submitted to us.
I'll speak for myself. But the whole idea here is to integrate down to the city manager level so that it reflects what the city is going to be doing and going to be spending money and resources. Okay, so I saw it as us giving the city manager perhaps, gee whiz, we're to look at this, this is what the outcomes are to be, and then you can go price it and put it in the budget and have the city be proud and talk about it. And that way staff would know where it's coming from, what we did, how it got there, and everybody works together, not just for city council, and then, you know, do a daisy wheel all over again. Again, what I was looking for is a foot in the door to city manager that says, look, this is what we're looking at. You got some stuff here that we may be able to enhance. We know it's gonna cost money. This is where you come in and you start looking at that, so that we can start doing some work together. Okay, so that was my main draw, immigration. Not going to one and then the other goes to the other.
So what would you suggest?
What would you suggest in this?
What I would suggest is that we look at what is there. I think you hit that one. Okay? And that we come together and say, this is what these things ought to be, and send it back to him and say, take a look.
To the city council?
Well,
The city council has to give direction to the city manager, so that your communications can be with them.
and that may be the case. Whatever the route is, but it's so that the tool can reflect what the TECs do. If that's what city council wants to do. If city council doesn't want to do it, then city council can go on record and say no. It's not that hard.
He was asking about which
Yeah,
email.
I believe Brad's question was, you know, related to the points that Kristen already made, whether or not those could be specifically just placed into our agenda. And I believe the answer is yes.
So to our agenda.
Yes.
But he needs the exact email, and it was sent at 1:58 p.m. That's what he's looking for.
Well, I think that's exactly what these two documents do, is they have pulled out the things, you know, that are relevant to the TEC and have lined them up for us. I mean, they did a really nice job, and I appreciate all of the work that they did. So we need to look at these two documents and figure out the ones that we like, and then submit that to the city council as a recommendation from this body. The timing is perfect because we're coming into budget season. These are the things that, you know, we think are important for the Indian River Lagoon and the environment in Titusville, and this is what we would like to see included in the city's budget, you know.
The document I see is the one that was submitted or sent by Ms. Lorty on 1:58 p.m. today. There were 4 attachments to that email. The first one I see is called 2023-05-10, Citizen Recommendation to TEC, FY 2024, updating our strategic planning metrics. That's the only one I see that's relevant. The other 3, I'm not sure. It looks like it's about
The second one
broadcasting and access, you know, citizen engagement, and an excerpt from a COPA meeting. So I'm not sure what this, if the first one I think is what's being asked for, I just need confirmation of that. But I don't know what the second document
But the second one is the participation. That one is also relevant. That's the 2 documents that she's referring to. It starts.
One is called Citizen Recommendations to the Titusville Environmental Commission regarding updating of fiscal year 2024 performance measures and targets, citizen participation opportunities. And then the other one is called Citizen Recommendations to the Titusville Environmental Commission. Well, those are the same, but there's 2 different documents that both have the same title.
Similar title, they're not the
Similar
same,
titles.
similar title. Thank you.
I'll leave these with you.
Okay.
And I can give a hard copy.
Because, yeah, I saved them in my computer at home, so you can have these to make sure that,
So for the secretary, I guess what you have in your hand is what you are asking to be into your agenda
Yes,
for next month?
Yes.
And those would be the only items attached to that
What about
agenda.
the email that goes, that they were
I was,
attached to?
I would ask Ms. Lori to come up, or ask her to come up to speak, because if she needs to speak, or you want her to speak, it needs to be part of the record, because she's not being recorded.
May I?
Yeah, come on.
So real quickly, I would just recommend that the email itself is also added, because that also provides some narrative and similar to what we did this year, so that, or to this meeting. So the email and the 2 attachments would provide the basis. The other attachment had to do with the January 11th meeting and the audio recording, and the other one was an example. It was an example of including citizen recommendations. It is somewhat relevant to, to just have all those attachments together, because it's an extra several pages. It's okay to not have that one. The 2 documents and the email would be a great discussion point. Okay.
Which documents?
The documents that say the citizen, we'll give you hard copies, but one of them says the citizen participation recommendations if you open it, and then the other one has 6 citizens listed, and it's the recommendations for the strategic planning. It's hard, let me.
The first one I see is a 3-page document, Citizen Recommendations to Titusville Environmental Commission, TEC, regarding updating of fiscal year 2024 performance measures and targets, citizen participation opportunities.
Yes.
Okay.
That's one, yes.
All right, and this is relevant because this is related to the performance measures and not.
Correct.
Okay.
And it also is tagged, it says TEC. It is flagged for each of the measures that I felt was directly relevant to the TEC. So there are 11 of them in there, and that's tagged in that 3-page document.
Okay, and the second document is called Citizen Recommendations to Titusville Environmental Commission regarding updating of fiscal year 2024 strategic performance measures and targets presented to TEC members for the May 10th, 2023 TEC meeting.
Exactly. And the emails that provides the context of that.
There are 4 emails, ma'am.
Just the 1150, or is it 158 email? It was the.
Those attachments were included in the email that was sent to me on 1:58 p.m.
Yes. Yes, because the other one was the other substantive email was in opposition to the idea of you guys being inserted into the process. You can read that. You can decide if you want that as part of it, but I just objected to the idea that this has to be separate. So, and I had a narrative about that. That is in one of the emails. It was addressed to Mr. Parrish and Mr. Larice, and it made commentary on the idea of this just being a management tool, and that, it says, let's do this. And you guys are saying that as well, but if you would like that, that is the email that was sent separately, and it provides the narrative to say why I think you guys belong in that process.
Ma'am, the email.
That one was sent, Mr. Parrish, at, that one was sent at 4:01 p.m. It's directed to Mr. Parrish and City Manager Lewis.
I thought we were still on the email that was timed 1:58 p.m.
I don't want to include the email, okay? This is enough. You got that? Sit down, okay? Please.
Yeah, I'd like to call the question. We had a motion to table this topic on the board, and it was seconded.
Yeah. So, do we need a roll call for this, Lori?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
sorry, I missed you seconded that. Does
Let me
anyone
write it
remember?
down. The motion was made by you. You seconded it.
Delgado.
Okay, Member Delgado seconded it. To table this until the next meeting.
Ready?
All right.
So we're tabling all the agenda item, all the attachments you see on that agenda item to the next
So
meeting?
you can then include Kristen's comments and her emails, whatever, in the agenda packet next time.
Well,
Yes, we're gonna move
sir,
it off next month.
There are 4 emails and many attachments that have so
The
many.
two that we just talked about.
The
correct?
2 plus the email, or
Just include the 2 attachments.
just the 2 attachments?
Yes.
To the existing agenda with all the attachments that are currently there to your next meeting. In the agenda, you have, right now, the documents that you had asked her to include in there. If you look on page 12 of your packet, all the way to page 32 of your packet, do you want those items included as well?
No, I think all we need is what's on page 32.
So just keep,
No, I think we should have 20, where is it? The whole performance measures thing from page 23 on to what, 32? I think we need to look at all of those. There are some issues that haven't been discussed, like, for example, our ability as the sustainability board. And to think that sustainability doesn't impact financial stability would be incorrect. So there are some issues that we have on our board that impact other aspects besides just quality of life. And I think those things need to be addressed in the same discussion as the rest of them, so that if we're gonna make a comprehensive list of those ideas and items that the TEC is interested in monitoring and metering, then we should discuss them and whole, not just the part. So that's why I'm saying these should be incorporated for now in the agenda packet next time, so they're still there. It's just another 10, 12 pages.
Mr. Majek, you're suggesting just the metrics you see on page 23 through 32.
That's what I'm suggesting.
So the other documents that are before that, between pages 12 and 22 of your packet, do not include.
Scroll back again, sorry.
Page 12 through 22 of your packet,
Yes.
do not include them.
Do
include the whole thing.
No,
Okay.
before 23.
From page 20, I said from page 23 to 32. I'm not, what I have trouble with on the other stuff is the overwrite that happens on the bottom of the page. If you look at the bottom of the page, whatever, I can't tell even what page it is because the page number is written over. Page 22. Look at the bottom of page 22. Can you read that?
On your PDF writer, it should say what page is on the bottom of
It has 3 things overwritten, at least 2 things.
If you look on the bottom of your application that you have open, your PDF reader,
Yeah.
it should say what page number you're on in the packet.
Except the last thing I can read is draft special.
It's not
meeting
crossed
March
over,
7th.
sir. It's right there on the software. I can come up and show you if you like.
You can come up and show me on mine because it's overwritten. It says page 22 on top of something else. Yeah. And then it says of 996.
I have the same.
You see this? That's the page number you're talking about. I understand you're looking at that. I'm looking at what's on the document. And when I go to print it, this is what I get. Can we fix that?
I can't fix that now.
I know you can't fix it now. Can we fix it for future meetings? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to confirm that you know that we're on this page.
He wants you to use that number up there.
Yeah, I guess I have to use it a different way.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you can't use that number at the bottom, you can only use the number at the top.
So I think he wants to include page 23.
332. The performance measures, yes.
So the commission is going to make a motion to include everything you see here and table it over to your next meeting with the 2 attachments discussed.
Right. Yes, thank you. All right, can you, call the roll?
Member Young,
Yes.
Member Delgado,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Majak,
Yes.
Member Perez,
Yes.
Member Tucker, Chairwoman Thompson.
Yes. Okay, so we're gonna table those till the next meeting.
Motion to extend the meeting to 8 o'clock.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of extending the meeting till 8 o'clock, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, let's move on. All right. So, I was trying to understand what's going on with the tree technical manual review. The way I interpreted it is that we have the existing, tree list, and then we have the, IFAS tree list, and there's a consultant that's gonna look at both lists, and they're gonna take out some of the bad stuff that's in the existing tree list, and they're gonna add what's relevant out of the IFAS list to come up with one tree list. Did I understand that correctly?
If you look on page 96 of your packet, So if you see that email I sent to the consultant, because when we received this approval of your recommendation to City Council, they approved the recommendation and made it to an advisability directing us to go forward with this. We decided to use a consultant to help us out. You'll see on that email there, Council's direction. In bold, Council directed staff to take the TEC's recommendation, incorporate it into the current tree list in the city's technical manual. Council desired not to replace the current tree list in the city's technical manual, however, incorporate the city's TEC's recommendation to modify the current tree list. So up further on that same email, I tried to clarify to our consultant exactly what we were looking for. So it looks like there were two lists. We were update the city's landscape technical manual approved trees and shrubs, incorporate the IFAS extension keystone species list into the city's trees and shrubs list where appropriate. And also stated recommend trees and shrubs that should be removed from the landscape technical manual where appropriate. Also identify Florida friendly and native vegetation. And then the process in steps 2 and 3 on when to present this. So they do plan to come to you at your June 14th meeting to present this. But this is an opportunity I want to give you to take a look at what they've come up with. And if you have any comments or questions, I can try and have those relayed to the consultant in preparation for their presentation to you on the 14th. The staff is still looking at this as well. We still have not completed our review. So the final document that they came up with, it starts on page 35 of your packet and it goes to page 46.
So, starting on page 35 and going to 46, that is the end result of combining the two lists?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so it's here for you guys to look at and comment on. Somebody did a lot of work on this. Did the consultant do this?
Yes.
Okay.
So obviously if you don't have any comments now, or if it's, if you want to relay comments to us individually, we can take those and have those as sent to the applicant or the consultant rather in preparation for the meeting as individual citizen comments. Otherwise, we'll take any comments you have this evening as a collective from the commission.
First, I need to get caught up because I wasn't here in August. I was here last spring. We were discussing actually several times the idea of going with strictly Florida native and then Florida friendly in our tree and shrub guide for the city. I thought that's where we were headed. We had presentations by the Florida Native Plant Society and others, and from IFAS too. And their recommendation was Florida friendly. So how we got to what we voted on, which was, I guess, this, I don't even know what to call it because I haven't quite gotten the name down. What do we call it? What was it called?
This list.
The tree list.
No, yeah, there was a name for it that they used. I'm lost. I'm just going back to the tree technical.
The reason that it's not strictly Florida native is because the city council chose not to make it strictly Florida native.
But we had changed it from Florida native and Florida friendly now to native keystone species. I don't know when or where that transition came in. That was my first question to the council here. And why that distinction was made. Because what city council ended up doing completely obfuscated the entire approach that the TEC was asking for. And that was to get rid of non-native, non-Florida friendly plants. And the only way to do that was just to ditch what we have and accept the Florida friendly and Florida native IFAS lists. That's what we had been talking about at least for a year prior to last August. So not being here and not being able to contribute, I can't say. But I can tell you that the end result of what we have is to simply incorporate keystone species into an already list of trees and shrubs that we've already had, and most likely were already there. So we have accomplished zip. We've got a full list of trees that are both native and non, some friendly, some possibly not. And this is what we should be doing, is removing non-native trees, non-native species, period. But I can go with Florida friendly, that's what I had said before, but there's no reason to be growing anything other than Florida native things in our soils. They don't need fertilizer, they don't need additional water, they're drought tolerant, salt tolerant. They're what belong here. What doesn't belong here is turf grass and other sorts of things. So until we can get a handle on this, I don't know. That was my first question, was how we got to where we're here, where we got with these trees and what we have. And to me, what we need to get rid of are clearly those things that are non-Florida friendly.
So there's not a column for Florida friendly. There is a column that says native, and I'm not sure whether Florida friendly is native only, or if it's a non-native plant that can tolerate growing here.
Yeah, the Florida friendly non-natives don't compete in the environment and take away from the feeding of the wildlife and whatnot that a native plant in that same space or area would accomplish.
Okay, I can say something?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry you missed it, but we had like 5 meetings over this. And the tree committee put forth their things. And at the very end, as I remember, it was discussed to combine certain things and leave certain things out. So what you're asking for, supposedly this is what it is. But whether I can prove it or not without taking those previous lists and by hand, look at those 2 lists and look at this and see if they actually did what was recommended at those 4 or 5 meetings we had, where we discussed all those different plants. Okay, the tree committee people aren't here today, and I appreciate it if we take and have them look at this list and see if the combination that was made meets the requirement that we asked for. So I can't sit here and say, yeah, it was accomplished, but I can say if we have that committee, let's all get together and meet again and review and say yes or no at the next meeting, that this met that requirement, that meets what Mike is saying, because that was what Mike said is what we were trying to accomplish, but I can't say that this did it.
Yeah, I vaguely recall, now that you bring it up,
We had like
those
4 or 5
discussions,
meetings.
and yeah, so it may not be inconsistent with what you were after, okay, but they did drive the direction of, you know, where we went.
Well, I just happened to look on page 36 and found Chinese elm. I don't think that's indigenous, but it also turns out to be on the invasive list. So that's just one. There's likely to be more. It's listed as a non-native.
Okay, but see, I can't say that, but the tree committee can tell you that, or not.
What tree committee?
We had 4 people here, it was called the tree committee. Week after meeting, they
Oh,
said,
okay, the tree team.
Tree team.
this tree committee sitting here and we went through tree after bush after bush and talked about them. And at the end of the thing, it was turned over to them to do this. Now, the only person that I can't do this, but someone from that committee needs to come and say whether we accomplished it or not.
You were looking for a recommendation for the consultant, Bradley, and I think maybe the thing is just to add another column that's Florida friendly or not. And if we can do that, then we can identify all of those pretty quickly which are not Florida friendly. And then we can make a motion to remove them at the next meeting.
Yeah, I glanced at this, and it does look to me like they did include some of the stuff that was in the list that Marlis provided of the keystone species. But, you know, I'm looking on Google right now. This plant is considered invasive by Virginia, Wisconsin, New Jersey, Nebraska, North Carolina, and wherever DC is, but it doesn't say anything about in Florida, but it says don't plant Chinese elm. So I think, you know, we can send this list out to the tree team and have them look at it. I mean, this is our opportunity to comment on it, and that's why it was provided to us, so that we can look at it, so that we could even send an email to Mr. Parrish that says Chinese elm is an invasive, it needs to be removed, because that was one of the tasks that was given to the consultant, was to remove the invasives out of this list. The city council made it very clear that they were not in favor of totally eliminating the existing tree list that's in the manual, but they were okay with adding, you know, some more Florida native and Florida friendly plants to it. But that's what we do. We should be looking at this list and Googling plants that we don't know and making recommendations on what we think shouldn't be included. But I can understand, I mean, like, you look at the 3 tababulas. I mean, they may want to have a flowering tree in their front yard, and I don't think it's right for us to say, no, you can't plant tababulas, which do quite well here in Titusville, because it's not a Florida native. I don't think that's, you know, I mean, they're used all over the state. I don't think we should condemn some of the plants that do well here that people might like to have in their yards, or crepe myrtle. There's an example. You know, I get it. We should go through this list and identify the invasives and ask that they be removed. We should not be recommending planting invasives. Absolutely, Chinese elm should not be included in this list, but that's why it was provided to us, so that we can take a look at it and make recommendations to Mr. Parrish about what we think should be removed before the June meeting, so that the consultant can look at it and remove them. But the council made it very clear that they were not going to, you know, they're not going to just go with only Florida natives in the recommended tree list and plant list. It's not going to happen.
Just to be clear, that the consultant was tasked to also recommend certain species to be removed from the existing list. So we are still trying to do a comparison. I've included in the agenda here the existing, what the code says, plus the keystone list that was submitted to us, and then you can compare that to what they came up with, see what's missing and what's added.
So I'd like to recommend that we have this list reviewed by us and the tree committee people and the consultant by the next meeting.
And there's a card.
Well, is that a motion, Mr. Young?
I like to, yeah.
Is there a second to Mr. Young's motion? That,
Do it with your mic on so she can.
yeah, right.
Yes, I'd like to move that we have this new list created by the consultant from our input for the tree committee who made this up, as we directed it to the consultant, that the players that worked for us for 4 months last year meet again at the next meeting, and for all involved to say yes or no to what's in the list.
Just to clarify, I'm sorry, there isn't a tree committee, but you're talking about a tree team?
Yeah.
That's not a formal group. So is there a core group of people that we're trying to, you just want to make this available to the public in some fashion outside of what we've already done?
I assume what I'm hearing now is that the tree team really isn't legal. Okay, is that what it is? Okay, so then, how do I make it, well, if you put it in here, then it becomes available to the public.
It is available to the public. You can certainly share it as regular citizens with anybody else you feel is
Okay,
worthwhile looking at.
and I recommend that we make this available to the people that we wish to comment on this.
See that Jay St. Ange gets a copy of it, please.
Okay.
Does anybody know what?
Was there a second to Member Young's?
Yeah.
And let's simplify the motion if you can. I mean, that's one of the problems that this committee has is we make these motions that are a full paragraph. So, like, simplify the motion to where we just make this list available to people that would want to comment, or that are interested in commenting on it. I mean, we know who those people are, but we need to make the motion simple for Lord.
Okay, I move that we take this list, make it available to whoever would like to look at it, and for us to make a decision at the next meeting of how we wish to move forward.
I'll second for discussion and a friendly amendment that we include the addition of a column that indicates whether it's native or friendly.
I approve.
Or friendly, rather.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so the motion was made that we make this list available to interested parties and that we add a column for Florida friendly. So that's different than native. Florida friendly is definitely different than Florida native. So that would be adding an additional column. And the motion was made by Member Young and seconded by Member Myjack. Are there any cards?
Yes, we have one card.
Kristen Lortie, Titusville Tree Team. I would like to read you a statement that was submitted, that was sent to the TEC on May 6th at 2:11 p.m. from K St. Ange, so that you have this for your consideration. It says, Commissioners, after reviewing the draft tree technical manual, I am pleased to see so many native plants on the list. We all know that native plant species support far more native insects than do non-native plants, and that native insects support native birds. However, please consider recommending amending the palm section of the tree technical manual to include only native palm trees. Lethal bronzing disease has now been found in 16 different species of palms and is spreading across the state. Palms most susceptible to lethal bronzing disease include wild date palm, edible date palm, Canary Island date palm, Senegal Island date palm, sable palmetto, and queen palm. The tree technical manual lists Phoenix, SPP, which includes edible date palms, Canary Island date palm, and Sylvester palms. There is no cure once a palm is infested with this disease, which is transmitted by insects. Management of lethal bronzing disease involves removal of infected palms and preventative injection of antibiotics, which cost $110 per healthy tree per year. There's a link to an article that's in the email. She goes on to say, sable palms, Florida's state tree, have been found to have lethal bronzing disease. However, they are essential in erosion control along the lagoon as they buffer against storm surges. As they have a high salt tolerance, they can grow where other trees cannot. As well, their berries are eaten by many birds. Please consider this information. Palm trees do not sequester carbon at the same rate as our native canopy trees and do not provide shade, cool down streets and sidewalks to help counter the urban heat island effect that canopy trees do. Said Penny Redford, the Resilience and Climate Change Manager for West Palm Beach. The average palm in southern Florida only absorbs 5 pounds of CO2 per year. Compared to other trees, oaks, mahogany, pines, and cedars that can sequester more than 3,000 pounds of CO2 over their lifetime, it may be best to exclude palms in favor of more broadleaf trees or conifers. Another link. Goes on to say, larger palm trees barely function like actual trees. While they provide some shade, cooling, carbon sequestration, and air pollution removal, it is relatively little compared to a large canopy tree. Although palms take up some stormwater because of their shallow root structure, skinny trunks, and narrow, thin canopy, they do not come close to matching the capabilities of a mature canopy tree, such as a live oak for ecosystem benefits. Furthermore, they are expensive to maintain as a street tree, as they require frequent fertilizing, frond pruning, and removal. Another link she adds. Palm host range of lethal bronzing disease, phytoplasma, and she adds the scientific names and the common names of several palms in this email. And then below it, she said, and I'll read this last sentence and then I'll go back and list those trees. Taking all this into consideration, please consider recommending only native palm trees on the tree technical manual. And on her common names that get the lethal bronzing disease, she's listed Christmas palm, Bismarck palm, Pindo palm, Carpentaria palm, coconut palm, Chinese fan palm, Canary Island date palm, edible date palm, pygmy date palm, wild date palm, Fiji fan palm, buccaneer palm, Mexican palmetto, cabbage palm, queen palm, Chinese windmill palm. And then she lists several, about 16 counties in Florida with confirmed cases of lethal bronzing disease. So those were the comments that she had, and it may have a departure from where the direction is, but at least that's her statement that has been submitted, and have weigh in from the tree team. Thank you.
Thank you. And you can remember how hard it was to get just the Sylvester palm removed out of this list last year, which we were successful in doing. So this is our chance, but there are Sylvester palms and date palms and Pindo palms all over town that have lethal bronzing disease. I mean, there's a Sylvester palm 3 palm trees down right in front of where Koiglers used to be, dead from lethal bronzing. All of these palms are going to die. It's kind of irresponsible for us to allow people to be planting them, because that guy that spent all that money planting all those Sylvester palms at the Winn-Dixie, he may have invested in a bunch of dead palm trees, because they don't look too good. And the lethal bronzing is definitely here. You can, if you take Highway 46, heading west from 1792, and you're going west on Highway 46 in downtown Sanford, all through the median is all Sylvester palms that, they're just trunks because of lethal bronzing disease. So actually it would be beneficial to developers to at least take those particular palms that are susceptible to lethal bronzing out of this list, because it's just getting worse, and we don't want it here in Titusville. It's here in Titusville. But again, that is our responsibility to go through this list and make these recommendations before the June 14th meeting. Don't wait until June 14th and then say, oh, by the way, I think we need to take these off. You need to do that now. Like this week, go home, look at this list, and get this information to Mr. Parrish in time so that the consultant and staff has time to digest it before the next meeting in June.
Would that part of my motion, we do it by next meeting?
You said at the next meeting.
Oh.
It needs to be prior to the next meeting.
And I'd like to amend it to be before the next meeting.
Second holds.
Thank you. So you got that, Lori?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there any more?
I'm sorry, Lori, can you repeat the motion so I know what to do?
I mean, not verbatim. It's for TEC to review the list, make available to the public, and make recommendations, send comments to Mr. Parrish so the consultant can have them before the June meeting.
I would recommend then, if you want to see a revised version of this before at the June 14th meeting, impose a deadline so that when you provide these comments to us, so I can give them to the consultant so they can make their revisions. I would suggest maybe by next week, if possible. By next Wednesday?
In your motion?
How about by the last day of this month?
That won't give them enough time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the agenda has to be approved pretty soon right after that, and
Then what date would you like? The 10th?
Today is the 10th.
Today's
We got
the
a
10th.
week.
So what date, should I make it the 20th?
I would say the 17th
17th?
of this month.
So we have to have it to you by the 17th to have it in by next meeting.
That way I can provide those comments to the consultant and they have enough time to make the revisions.
Okay. 17th then.
Second hold.
Second hold.
Thank you, Mr. Parrish. All right, so like, we need a roll call, for this vote, I guess.
Member Perez,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Majak,
Yes.
Member Delgado,
Yes.
Member Young,
Yes.
Member Tucker, Chairwoman Thompson.
Yes. All right, moving on. All right, so we're down to petitions and requests from the public. I think unless somebody that hasn't already spoken in petitions and requests, is there anybody else that would like to speak?
Don't we have new business?
We just finished it.
Oh, sorry, I was on.
The tree technical manual review, we had A and B, yeah. So, now we're on to reports, community development presentation video.
The Community Development Department was tasked to come up with a video, 8 minutes or a little thereabouts, about the department. We presented it to our department video to City Council. The City Manager asked that we share it with the various commissions and boards. So if you'd like, I can go ahead and show that to you, or wait till your next meeting. It's about 8 minutes.
Yeah. That's fine.
Maybe they can send us a link.
Yeah, is this something you could send us a link and we can view on our own?
We can do that.
Why don't we do that? Because I think next meeting is gonna be a lot of discussion again, so, yeah. You guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, just send us a link and we'll look at it. We can look at it multiple times if we want to. Okay, semi-annual report, have you guys checked that out? Are you guys okay with that? It's on the last page of the packet. Page 99.
This is your opportunity to communicate with the council, so that's a standard report we're tasked to provide to them.
And what's the date when this would go in front of council?
I believe this would go before them on the 13th of June.
Okay. I will not be here then, because I'll have a fish management council, meeting. Member Majak, would you be able to present this or come to the, city council?
June. June 13th, I gotta put mine,
Yeah, look at your calendar.
Yeah, surprisingly, city council's already on the calendar,
Okay.
so, yeah, I can do that.
All right, so Member Majak, you'll be here to, present this to the city council. So this is your opportunity to comment, Member Perez?
I'm sorry.
I don't see any lights. You guys okay with this?
Is there an older version of this? Or a prior version of this? The last 6 months of last year?
Oh, for previous one.
Right, so at least I can have a feel for.
Mr. Parrish, can you email him the last report?
The one prior to this one?
Right.
Yes.
Just so I can see, formatted and content.
Yep.
Thank you, appreciate it.
It's 8 o'clock.
All right, it's 8 o'clock and we still have, member reports. It's not on the agenda. I do have something that I need to bring up. Can somebody make a motion to extend for another 10 minutes?
I'll make the motion to extend the meeting for 10 minutes.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, so we're okay with the semi-annual report. Member Majak is gonna, show up at the city council. Member reports.
Is there a vote, do you take comment on that item?
I'm sorry?
Can we comment on that item on your semi-annual report? It's quick, but I would like to.
This is our speaker card?
Yep, I just have to sign it.
I would just, Kristen Martin, Cocoa resident, I'm looking at the report, I would just like to suggest that City Council, it has your items, significant items that you've done for the past few months, and one of them that's missing is on January 11th, the TEC voted to recommend to City Council for broadcasting the live streaming of the TEC meetings, and that is absent from that report, and I think you would do well to include that because it was an order of business that you completed on January, and that should be included in that report that is submitted to City Council. So I'd like to bring that to your attention and recommend that you include it. Thank you.
Because we have to discuss it again because it was in the minutes incorrectly. Can we include it now, or does that have to wait until after we discuss it?
No, this is an agenda item. You have this report. This is an opportunity to make changes to it.
You guys okay with adding that? Yeah?
Okay.
Okay.
The report?
Yeah.
The January.
Add the January, well, it doesn't have to say when, but it should be, I agree with Ms. Lorte. It's important, you know, that to this body and to the citizens in the city that they be able to have access to these meetings. So yeah, if you can add that, Mr. Parrish.
We can do that.
Thank you. Great, good save. Anything else? Okay. All right, member reports. Mr. Young, you have anything?
No.
Mr. Marquette?
Yes, two things. First, I need to submit my request for leave from, I'll be here through June, but July through October I'll be gone. So if you guys want me on the TEC, we need to make a motion to council to let me have a hiatus in May. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and I haven't reviewed our charter recently, but the idea occurred to me of having some kind of beautification commission where members of the TEC would oversee members of the public that would be involved with the city's permission to put in plantings and flowers and gardens and things like that along maybe City Hall and around the area to help beautify the city. It would be something that could be done and overseen by this committee, but I don't know if there's any interest anywhere else to do it. I just keep thinking that there must be some way that the citizens on the TEC and the citizens of the city can get involved for the benefit of the city. But that's my report.
Member Delgado?
Just want to
Okay. Member Perez?
Yeah, it just so happens that I had put in for a grant from the Florida Federation of Garden Clubs, and that actually came through. So we've got a little money to start our mangrove nursery at the tree farm.
Okay, mine's simple, it's not gonna take long. Representative Altman called me last night and asked for our support for a project that we've been working on. It's the inflow project, and this is easy because this is something that a lot of people have been asking about. You know, if we actually pumped salt water into the river or the Mosquito Lagoon or the Banana River, or opened up an inlet in the Mosquito Lagoon. There's been all kinds of ideas, but FIT is 4 years into a feasibility study on doing an inflow project at Port Canaveral, and they just got $921,000 last year. The appropriation request this year was for $4.9 million to be used for phase 4 of this inflow study. FIT backed out, but University of Central Florida has stepped in and they would like to take over they would oversee phase 4 of the project. That would be actually pumping water out of the port and into that little cove that's next to the locks to see what kind of impact it would have on the critters and stuff that are there, to see whether it would actually help with the dissolved oxygen and reduction in nutrients. And they would also like to go up into Mosquito Lagoon and start studying Mosquito Lagoon. I have suggested that they also include the Northern Banana River, but right now the way that the funding is it only mentions the Port Canaveral and Mosquito Lagoon. Representative Altman is looking for a letter of support from anybody that wants to write it, but he asked if it would be possible for the city of Titusville to send a letter supporting this $5 million project to study what would happen if we add salt water to our estuaries. And I'm hoping that the TEC would make a recommendation to the city council that the city of Titusville support Representative Altman's effort to get $5 million to do this study.
Are you looking for a motion now? Well, then I would definitely make that motion. I'm familiar with the project. Gary Cirillo was doing that at FIT. And they were going to use the tidal motion as the water comes up, let it flow in, and then just a simple baffle to shut it off to keep it from going back out. You know, now you got an automatic flow. And they cut off an estuary, and we're going to start evaluating. I guess they're in the process now of growing that to something bigger. Yeah, that's wonderful. I certainly hope the TEC will vote to support that.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
I think that was a motion.
All right, and here's, they actually have some recommended language that the city could embellish on, but I would hope that the city, I'm sorry, in this email from Angelique, there is actually recommended language, so if you guys want to write your own letters, go for it, but he's hoping that there would be enough support so that Governor DeSantis doesn't pull this $5 million recommendation out of the budget, you know, when he goes through the final things.
Did you give a copy of this?
I gave one to Lori, and there's 3 more. So the motion was made by Member Mychak and seconded by Member Perez to request that the city draft a letter of support for this $5 million inflow study. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that's it for me. Thank you very much for your patience. It was a good meeting. And oh, I'm sorry, we got a discussion of future agenda items. Mr. Parrish, I think that we added something to the agenda for next week already, or next month. What was that? At the beginning of the meeting, we identified something to put on next agenda.
Meeting minutes.
Huh?
Meeting minute, that extra meeting minute.
Yeah, the January 11th meeting minutes. And I believe that a good deal of the meeting is going to be spent talking about the 2 documents. Is there anything else that you guys want to see added to the June meeting? Oh, and you also have the technical tree manual review. I think that's enough for next meeting.
That's for the 3, yeah.
I think that's enough. You guys agree with that? Okay.
The meeting's adjourned. Thanks again for your patience.